The FujiCast.
There we go, Kev. We've got to have some Spanish music for you this week. I thought we'd get a bit of a Spanish theme going. Are you having a good time? And are we going to be able to keep this expensive link between us for the next however long we talk?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Right, you got to paint the picture. Whereabouts? So the FujiCast this week, by the way, is very, very different to the normal FujiCast. It will be so for the next 3 weeks because I'm in the studio in it's not so sunny UK today, and you're in Spain where it's always sunny. Temperature today is what?
I don't know. I haven't really looked today, but it's been kind of hitting 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37.
Oh, 37. Yeah. Are the children roasting out there? How are we doing the show today? You've sent them outside or something, haven't you?
They're down by the pool, yeah. I'm looking out through the window at the Cabrera Sierra Mountains, blue skies, geckos running around. All that stuff.
Have you met any of those horrible creepy crawlies that we see on your feed all the time?
No. Actually, it's a bit cooler this year. So I think the creepy crawlies are staying away a little bit, which is good. No
scorpions.
No, I haven't seen any scorpions yet.
No tarantulas.
No tarantulas. Nothing. Oh, I found a couple of big old spiders drowned in the pool in the morning when I cleaned it out, but I don't think they were tarantulas. Just
hang on a minute. Hold on. You're cleaning the pool out. What? Where are your manservants?
Yeah, well, we're at Gemma's dad and his wife's house. So
I know, but it's a holiday. They live there all the time. They should be sort of serving you on hand and foot.
Yeah, bless them. They're absolutely as good as gold. They spend all their time with the kids. They feed them and everything. And me and Gemma just kind of lounge around drinking cerveza. And
sounds perfect. I'll let you into a secret, by the way. Kev spoke to me a couple of days ago. He said we've got to go. You hadn't moved for a couple of days. We've got to go out because we've run out of beer. That's the only reason.
Yeah, that's the thing. So Brian stocks the fridge up with beer and wine when we get here.
Yeah,
and we drank it all in kind of 3 or 4 days. So after 4 days, we decided we needed to leave the house.
Yeah,
and take the drive. We actually took the kids down to the beach yesterday it's about a 20-minute drive away, and there's a supermarket down there. And
is that the closest place? Because you are literally in the middle of nowhere, aren't you?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it looks like we're in the middle of nowhere, but we're only 40-minute drive from Almeria Airport, so 20 minutes from the nearest beach and stuff. So yeah, it's actually perfect. There's nothing around us where we are, but we can get to places pretty quick.
And do you have neighbours?
Yeah, there's a couple of neighbours. It's hard to explain, but there's a couple of other houses nearby, although not that close. And then in the valley, and they're in the valley, I should say. And then the valley itself is huge, and so the little hamlet of Mizala, Mizala, is our nearest place, which is I think it has 11 houses. There's a little church there that they open once a year for Fiesta, which is on the 15th of August, which we always go to. That's it. Same old people sitting outside their house every year. That's it. There's no school or transport. There's no post here, for example. You can't get post. The post has to go to the nearest big town, which is Sorbas, and they just leave it with the in the town hall, and you just go and get it yourself if you need it.
What? Leave it on a table and see if you'll come and pick it up or something.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. That's about it.
And why do you sound like you're speaking from the bathroom?
Well, I'm in the living room. So Spanish houses are they're quite echoey, newer ones anyway. This is an old Cortigo which has been rebuilt, so it's been built to withstand the heat. I've got all of the shutters shut and the window shut to keep as much of the noise out as possible, including those noisy cicadas which you might be able to hear in the background.
I can't. You should see for the next episode we should open the windows and let the Spanish world in.
See.
Well, see. Right, let's launch off. And by the way, in the middle of this, so I'm sorry that Kevin couldn't take part in this bit of the show that I'm about to mention, but it would have technically been, it would have driven me to the cerveza, to be honest. So we decided on the Facebook group to invite in FujiCast friends. So I've kind of diarised my day ahead of me to speak to different people at different times. I've already spoken to a couple of people before we even turned the microphone on this morning. So
I diarised my day as well.
Yeah.
What is this? And then every hour on the hour for the next hour, next 3.5 weeks, it just says beer.
It just says beer every hour.
Yeah.
Oh.
Later.
God, your liver will send you home after a couple of weeks. Go on, sling your hook, go home. Right. So yeah, in the middle of all this, we're going to hear from FujiCast friends, and there's a little bit of it's a very quick fire. Going to fire through a whole load of, I'm just going to say listeners, I'll keep making a mistake otherwise, listeners, and at the same time there's a random, not so randomised random question that each of them has to answer, something like lens you can't live without, first camera you own, best photography book you own, most embarrassing mistake you've made. But the first time you'll hear that, Kev, is when it goes out, so you'll have to be a listener yourself. So go on, you've got some questions there, you can launch first.
Good afternoon from the US. This is from Jack Sharp, Instagram, jacksharp.photography. I've got a bad case of gas. Luckily, my budget doesn't allow me to go down the path of actually acquiring the gear. It's really more of gear envy and tricking myself into thinking I could take better photos with what someone else has. That's not what I'm emailing to ask about, though. My question to you, Kevin Neal, what are the practicalities, I presume, or practices, each of you have to keep the creative juices flowing? I find that I frequently get creative dry spells, which lead to doubt in my creativity and photographic abilities, which leads to my gear and skill envy. I know gear doesn't make a good photographer, but for some reason, that's just where my brain goes when I get these dry spells. You both rock. I have listened to your podcast for a long time, and I've loved almost every episode.
Almost
every episode. Yeah. Which one didn't you love, I wonder?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for being so consistent with your content and taking time to answer the questions of us commoners. So,
commoners.
What do you do to keep your creative juices flowing? And by the way, sorry if you can hear some screaming in the background. I think Rosa is manhandling.
Oh, blimey. What, she just dropped on the floor?
That was a frying pan falling over in the kitchen. There's nobody else in the house, so that has to be a ghost.
Has Gemma just popped in and hit somebody with something? That's what it sounded like to me.
Cool, but the screaming you may pick up is screaming his head off.
No, that's Gemma. That's Gemma. I can hear her from here.
I can see her out the window. Actually,
go on then. What was your answer to the question?
Yeah, your creative practices, your creative juices. What do you do to keep your creative juices flowing?
Do you know? I spend a lot of my time looking at YouTube.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I'm a bit obvious. I just I love watching the creators on YouTube, particularly unknown ones. There's a channel called Nick Rice Photo, which I follow. And I don't think he'd mind. I think he describes himself, I think, as a troubled soul. I'm really interested in Nick's work, him as a photographer, not because he's one of these star YouTubers, but because he's a very real photographer with real world issues, and it's just something. And I'm inspired by watching people who are working to be their best in the genres that they choose.
Yeah, no, I'm with you actually with the YouTube stuff. There's a lot of great stuff on there these days, and it's funny because I was reading an article the other day. I can't remember where it was, where like YouTube is huge in the United States. More people watch YouTube on a basis than they watch Netflix or any of the domestic TV channels in the United States combined. It's like absolutely monstrous. Whereas in the UK, less so. There's a lot less people who seem to be interested in UK. And if I look at the stats on my YouTube channel, by far the biggest kind of demographic is the United States.
It is.
I love it. There's a lot of great stuff on there. And as people have heard before, I've got loads of books and stuff that I just kind of keep dipping into. But Instagram as well for me is probably an amazing thing. I use the little favorites part of Instagram. It's where you can kind of tag an image you really love, and I categorize them. So I create folders in that kind of favorites area. So like portraits and family and weddings and street and all that kind of stuff. So in the portraits one, I've got people like Louis Galvan. In the family one, I've got the amazing Cara Mew, who we wanted to get to speak at the X Weddings Festival. But unfortunately, she's due to have fortunately, she's due to have a baby on the same day as the festival. So
I thought that would
decided not.
Otherwise, we would have been all there with hot towels and not hot towels and hot water.
Yeah, exactly. So Cara Mew and lots of people like that, and I think it's great. And what Jack was kind of alluding to, I think, is something that we all suffer with, which is when you see amazing work, you somehow think, I can't ever be as good as that. It just, and then you sometimes don't want to look at it any longer because you just, I'm not sure envy is the right word, but maybe self-doubt or, whatever. And I think, isn't that what did for Picasso, or not Picasso, but, one of the famous artists who ended up chopping his ear off and all that kind of stuff because he never thought he was good enough. I think that there's a lot of people suffer from a little bit of that, and I kept myself in that. But you've got to keep your eyes open. You've got to look at the amazing stuff that's out there, and you're never going to be as good as everybody else. You're never going to be the best person, that's for sure. And so bear that in mind and just keep looking and loving and admiring and thinking, yeah, that's amazing, and I'm going to use that as a little bit of inspiration and see where my journey goes.
I should start using those Instagram. What do you call them again? Where you can.
Well, I called it favorites, but I don't think it is. It's when you tag. You can tag an image. It's the little bookmark. I think it's
bookmark. I've been using bookmarks for the wrong reason. You see, because when I see an advert and I think, I'm going to check that out a bit more, I bookmark the adverts, and that's caused all sorts of trouble. So,
I was listening to Matt Hart the other day on Facebook talking about Instagram and how it's it's fallen apart because it's full of adverts and blah 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 blah. I never get adverts on Instagram ever. I think I must be I never ever get adverts on Instagram. Not that I notice anyway.
On the feed as you go down, it's every what is it? Every 3 these days? Come on, somebody tell us.
But have you got an Instagram business account?
Yes, I do. No, or is it personal? Would that be the difference?
I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Mine's a business account. I never see adverts ever.
Okay. All right. Well, you've just mentioned Matt Hart, funnily enough, and something's just come in from him. So let me just tap on that. He's doing a plug. Are we allowed to do a Matt Hart plug? Should we do it?
Yeah.
We have a photo comp, and the adults are doing fine, but there's no kids. We only have a few. It's free to enter with great prizes. I don't suppose you can give it a shout. It's nice to see what the kids can do with the pictures. A bit later, I know, as it finishes at the end of the month. But go to Fujiholics for the photographer of the year. Fujiholics photography.
Yeah, and I'm one of the judges for that. So,
okay.
So Fujiholics, they are having a festival in Hull.
Yep.
Called it's part of the HIP Festival, which is the Hull International Photography Festival, which is every year. I'm doing some talks there and stuff. But the competitions, I think he's called them FOPTI.
Right.
Fuji Book of the Year or something, FOTI, I don't know, something like that. And there's the adults doing well, not enough children entering, and the prizes are amazing. There's like cameras and all sorts of other stuff. So if you're a youngster, I think it's under the age of 16, I think, that you might want to check. And you've got some pictures kicking around, enter them. Just enter them.
I'm going to get my little Thomas, who he loves doing this sort of stuff. I'm going to get Thomas to enter that. Right. And Matt's just writing back. This is all in sort of real time-ish. Yeah. All right. Chad Erickson. See, there's another mail. I was wondering how you. That was good timing, though. I was wondering how you could if you could talk a bit about your album design process, both of you. Do you have a specific philosophy, or do you just pick your favourites and put them in order by time? How much input do your clients have? How many pictures do you usually include, and so on? I want the clients to have the album they want, but I also want to be happy with the design. I find these two goals many times conflict each other. Just wondering if you could provide some insight. Thanks so much. Love the show. Love the shoe, as one of my favourite broadcasters says. Chad.
That wasn't.
Sorry?
That wasn't an email, by the way. Sorry to interrupt. That wasn't an email, by the way. I closed my email down after the last faux pas and copied it all to Notepad. And then
you got a message from Matt
what happened was my computer reminded me that I'm doing podcast recording at 10 a.m. this morning.
There we go. Right. Did you hear the album thing while it was all binging and bonging at you? How much input do your clients have? How many pictures do you usually include? But, funny enough, Chad, this has only just happened to me that somebody sent me. My suggestion to clients, I don't know what yours is, Kev, but I always say just send me a list of the ones you don't want in there, and I will pick from the rest because I'll be able to, create a cohesive design which all makes sense.
I'd be scared they'd send me, they remove everything bar 2 pictures.
Well, yeah, that's yeah, and I did get one back recently that had loads, and I actually phoned them and said, "Did you not like your pictures very much?" And they said, "No, we were just helping you." And I was thinking, no, that didn't help me. That made life much more complicated. Just take out 20 or so, and I'll choose from the rest. And then I find that, they just swap around a couple of pictures. And that, for me, works really, really well, because to go back to what Chad's saying here, it gives me an opportunity for me to be happy with the design, because I can see which pictures work together. And okay, if they want to tinker a little bit, fine. But there's only one rule. You don't stick black and white into a colour page, and vice versa. And then that seems to work okay. And that way I feel they've had input. They can feel I've had input, because they're selecting an album based upon something that they've seen I've done. So it's pointless them trying to design it, because it won't resemble what they've seen and like. And that kind of works for me. Now, you work in an entirely different way with albums, because I a lot of my albums have 150 to 160 images in them.
No, so I don't. A typical album for me will be 30 sides, 15 pages, 30 sides. And if it's 30 sides, then I'll encourage the clients to send me. I use Zenfolio so they can just select their favorites. I get an email and I tell them that to have no more than 50 images in that 30 sides. That way the images remain quite big and I can do impact pictures. But I also say to them, if you can't get 50 images, then let me know and I will give you options. And that way, you can upsell the pages and size and all that kind of stuff. So that's typically how I do it. But in terms of the layout, it's always chronological. I agree with you in terms of black and white on black and white. Other than that, it's pretty quick. I use Jorgensen Album Designer, so it's drag and drop, really, really simple. There's no drama in album design for me, none whatsoever. It takes minutes.
Really? Yeah. I suppose I'm slightly different in that there's also text involved in my albums, so often you'll see speeches and things like that appear, so people can remember what they've said. But that's a whole different kind of design process. Right. They are slightly shorter halves this week, fine people, and that's because we can't keep Kev away from the Cerveza too long. So we're going to go into our first ever listener meet, I suppose. Well, that's going to be it's going to be a see. I told you I'd come straight out of that FujiCast Friends thing. So we'll call it a listener meet. It's our first listener meet, and we'll talk about Brighton in a second as well. But we gave you an opportunity, and we'll do this again if it's successful, to give us a time you're available. We would get in, or I would, because Kev's in Spain, I would get in touch with you, find out a little bit more about you, and then ask a random question. First up then for this feature, it's going to be Clive Blair from Birmingham. Hi, Clive.
Hi, Neil. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Now, I know Brum a little bit because I dated somebody from Birmingham.
Okay.
And she used to work in the is it Rackham's, the big store?
Yeah.
Is Rackham still there? Is it still there?
You know what? I haven't really passed through Birmingham city centre that much to know, because they've changed it all since they built the Bullring.
Oh, yeah.
And all sorts of shops have come and gone. So I'm not sure if it is still there, actually.
So you're in the heart of Birmingham, but not the heart of Birmingham, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose where I live is actually north of Birmingham, but I know the Birmingham city centre, even though I don't know Rackham's if it's still there.
It's that big shop in the middle. Now, you're mainly a wedding photographer, aren't you? Because I'm looking at your website as we talk. So that's your chosen genre. Any other genres, portraits or anything else, or do you stick by weddings?
I really stick by weddings. That's what I'm known for. I don't advertise for anything else. Other things will come along the way, but I am known as a wedding photographer. And
stylistically, you're a bit of a mix, aren't you? By looking at it, it's a bit of pose, bit of documentary.
Yeah, I'd like to be 100% documentary, but personally,
what's stopping you then?
Even though I enjoy taking documentary, I still like the time when I take the bride and groom away. Just for, say, 10, 15 minutes for what I call a walkabout. Yeah. And I just like that artistic side as well, just to capture some nice, romantic, but in an informal setting photograph.
Well, what are the venues like in Birmingham? What's your favourite?
Oh my word! The favorite. They're not actually in Birmingham because I actually travel around. So there are quite a few stately homes, some with moats. Like there's Newhall that I quite like.
Yeah,
That's
I know
in the
Newhall.
heart of Birmingham. Anywhere else in Birmingham? Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. As I say, I do travel around, so I can't really say there's one particular venue in Birmingham that I go to a lot, and that is my favourite.
Well, I know you travel around because I'm just quickly zipping across your blog here, and I see Warbrook House. Is that the Warbrook House, Berkshire?
No, that's...
Oh, there's another one. There's another one.
Okay, hold on. Now I've got to think now. Where is Warbrook House? Because I go to these venues.
There's one near Basingstoke. But that is...
Oh, yes. It's London way. Yes, it is London. Yeah, Berkshire. Yeah, that's the one.
And because I've worked at Warbrook, so I know that one.
Oh, right. Yes, I was forgetting. That was, London. That was a friend of mine, another photographer who asked me to shoot his wedding. No pressure.
What does it feel? What does it feel like when you're asked to photograph a photographer's wedding?
Oh, it's a privilege, but also it's nerve-wracking because even though they trust you and they say just do your thing, still it's nerve-wracking because you know that they can pick holes, if you like. Not that they would, but I suppose it's just my mentality thinking, oh no, what if they pick up something that the average customer wouldn't pick up? But
I suppose actually they're also a bit more understanding, aren't they? They're more likely to get what you're doing and if anything, perhaps interfere less.
Yeah, there can be that side of things. Yeah, so it's like a double-edged sword, really. Yeah. They appreciate the art, and they will, as you said, they'll get the things. But as I said, maybe it's just the way that I think, and I worry too much. But so far I've not had any issues, so I've enjoyed it when other photographers book me.
Yeah, I'm doing a funny enough a wedding for a photographer this Sunday. And when we sat down to have a chat, our preamble chat, she said, now, I tell you one thing. I thought, oh, here we go. Okay. And she said, I don't want to feel like I've married the photographer. Okay. And I get it, because what she means by that is, I don't want you taking over my day. I want to spend time with my guests. It's, and I get that, and I've quite embraced that. You're not marrying the photographer. It could be a good marketing strap line, I think, Clive.
I'm always picking up, looking out for new things that I can put on the website.
You're not marrying Clive. Could be.
Yes, exactly.
Right, we're going to do a random question with you.
Wow.
So okay. Here we go. Round. Where will it stop? So, who inspires you? And you can't say Kevin.
Oh, well, that throws it out the window then, because I haven't got anyone else. Who inspires me?
What photographers do you look at? Do you look at other people's work?
I don't. I try not to, even though invariably I do gravitate towards seeing other photographers' work. But I try and look at non-wedding photographers' works. No one in particular. I just like to get a broad spectrum, different styles, so that I can incorporate my own style, if that makes sense, without it being obvious. Oh, yeah, that is such and such a photographer's influence in your work.
Clive, great to chat to you. Thank you for being first up on this feature.
Well, thank you for inviting me on.
Appreciate your minutes there. Thank you.
Oh, welcome. Thank you.
Next up, Stephanie Baxter. Now, Stephanie, you are the managing editor of Fuji Love magazine. You come with a title.
Yes, that's right.
How long does it take to edit that? Because that's a huge project.
Yeah, it takes quite a while. So we're sort of working on like a rolling month basis, but then we're always obviously having to look ahead and kind of scheduling new contributors for future months and stuff. But it doesn't seem like work in a way, because I just love it so much, and being able to kind of look at people's work who I really admire is just so great.
How did you end up getting that position then?
It's quite a funny story, actually. So a couple of years ago, I was already reading the magazine myself, and I'm a bit of a grammar, I'm in the grammar police.
Oh my word.
And then, so I just emailed Thomas, whose company it is, just to say, I love your magazine. I hope you don't think this is rude, but have you considered having a proofreader for the magazine? And it all just stemmed from there, really. So I started out just doing the proofreading, and then I could see that he had so much work and was so busy that I just kind of, got in touch with him again and was like, look, let me take some of this stuff off your plate. So yeah, it was just quite an organic process.
That's a great way to do things. That's a great attitude to have, isn't it? Because so many people think, that's wrong, maybe, but actually taking the initiative and doing it, I'm sure you did it in a way that was polite.
Yeah.
To then put yourself out there and say, I could do this for you.
That was so not like me as well. Like, I'm very much someone who kind of just sits back because of the fear and everything. But I just thought, you've got to just take a chance sometimes and look what's come of it. Like, I've got this whole new job and it's just been amazing. So
what do you photograph? What's your genre?
A bit of kind of different stuff. So I love street photography. And I mean, the whole reason I got into photography in the first place is because I used to work as an air hostess for British Airways. So I got like a DSLR to take on my trips, and it all kind of stemmed from there. So kind of travel and that sort of thing I love as well. And then I've sort of been dabbling with a bit of landscape as well. Just love getting outdoors and kind of just recording what I see and stuff. But
did you ever make photographs of those that were travelling on the aircraft? I'm sure that probably would have been a firm no, wouldn't it?
No, that would have been a really fun project to do. Yeah.
And last week, you could probably clear this one up, actually. I don't know whether you heard this, or maybe it was a couple of weeks ago. Kev said, we were talking about the bongs on aircraft when you take off, and he said the first bong says, we've taken off okay, and the next bong means cabin crew released. Is he right or wrong on that?
When you say released, do you mean you can get out of your seat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So the first bong says, everything went fine, chaps, we're okay.
Yeah.
And he said if it bongs twice quickly, bong bong, that means we're in trouble.
No, not necessarily. I think the two bongs was like because you can call each other. If you're in a different cabin to your colleagues, you can call through. So sometimes it's just us calling each other.
So Kev got me worried. He said if there's two quick bongs after you've taken off, that's that's calling Sully. So I feel a bit more secure now.
Good.
So magazine wise, so let's draw it back to the magazine then.
Sure.
Are you? I don't suppose you're allowed to. Thomas might not like this, but are you allowed to give us a little lowdown on some juicy stuff coming up?
Yeah. So we've got the August issue coming out tomorrow.
So by the time you hear this, it will be out. So that's okay.
Oh, yes, it will be out. So it will have just come out. And we've got Mindy Tan is going to be she'll have done our cover for us. And she was doing an article talking about photographing when she went to Cologne, which I think was for Photokina last year.
Yeah.
And we've got some great interviews as well. And we have Paul Sanders. He's been doing a series on mindfulness and kind of just being a bit more in the moment when doing photography. So that's going to be great as well. So
we've got a randomized random question for you just to face.
Okay.
I think if anybody can answer this, you can. So I'm going to randomize the randomizer. Who inspires you? And you can't say Thomas and you can't say Kevin.
Gosh, so many people. One person I've really been inspired by recently is Patrick LaRock.
Oh, yeah.
And just, I love how he captures just everyday stuff, like everyday images, but in just such a profound and beautiful way. And I used to take kind of a lot of everyday photos a while back, and I've kind of got out of the habit of that. But seeing his work just really inspires me to kind of take that up again and just make photography part of my everyday rhythms, I think. You've heard his story about how he went on that road trip and it sort of rescued his photographic mojo, as it were. Yeah. It's amazing. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing just to... I'm going away, darling, for a month or two. Well, that's fine. See you later. I'd love it. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Neil. Next up, it's Reuven, isn't it? Reuven Gotts. That's correct. Now, you're from California. I live in California. I'm actually from South Africa originally. Oh, right. I moved to Canada when I was very young, grew up in Toronto. About 4 years ago, I moved to New York City, stayed there for about 3 years, and now I live in Los Angeles. No wonder I can't work out your accent at all.
Now, you came to Fujifilm in a kind of roundabout way, I think, from what you were saying, when we were just genning up for these calls, didn't you?
Yeah, I did some photography when I was young. My dad set up a dark room in the basement, and I learned how to develop film and do enlargement and stuff. But I never really considered myself a photographer or took the idea of composition or ideas of pictures very seriously until I moved to New York City. And I thought, I can either walk to work looking down and thinking about my problems, or I can look up at this amazing place. And so I just started using my iPhone to take pictures, and I'd post a few from time to time on Facebook without much fanfare or anything. But when I would speak to my friends, they would say, I love seeing New York through your eyes. It really can really tell that you love it there. And it really kind of shook me. I'd never thought of ever being a person who could do that, who could convey something by imagery or anything even close to artistic. I wouldn't call myself an artist in any way. So I thought, okay, maybe I should buy a better iPhone. And a friend of mine told me that around the corner from our office was the Sony Square, which is a big showcase place for Sony to show off all their different tech.
Yeah.
And I went down there, and they have these photo sessions where they have Sony artisans of imagery come in and give a presentation, and then you go on a photo walk, and Sony lends you a camera. So I didn't know what mirrorless was. They asked me which model I wanted. I had no idea. And a friend had lent me a big Canon DSLR, and decided that wasn't for me. That's why I was thinking of an iPhone, because in New York it was hot and sweaty in the summer, and the big Canon weighed so much I didn't want to take it with me. And so then I got to try that Sony mirrorless, relatively lightweight, relatively small, amazing picture quality. And so I bought one, and so that Sony Square thing really worked out for them. So I bought one and started carrying it around. And then I had to, I had a couple of lenses, and I had a big bag because I wanted to carry it with me all the time. And I didn't know what kind of photography I was doing. I didn't know that there was this term street photography, but I started watching YouTube videos and started reading blogs. And I came across a woman named Valerie Jardin, who is a street photographer, and that kind of gave me a name for what I was doing. And I started following her and others. And even though the Sony was so much lighter than that Canon, it still required me to carry a special bag to carry it around with me. And then I really started to get like Fuji envy and this X100 model. And then I found Kevin's videos, and
Was that the original one then, Reuven? Was that the X100, the original flavour?
No, the F. Sorry, the F.
Okay.
It was only not that long ago, so it was when the F came out, which seemed like the perfect culmination of that stream.
Yeah.
So I went and bought one, and I just loved it. I loved everything about it. I stumbled in my own way on what Kevin talks about, which is shooting in acros mode. I like seeing things in black and white. I like composing in black and white. And I started to walk around New York City and take pictures, and I really enjoyed that. Having moved to California, I realized that doing street photography in New York City is kind of like being dropped into a game in easy mode. It's all right there for you.
It is. That's a bit like in our country, going into London and doing it, fine. Because in New York, they just walk past it. They don't care, do they?
They don't care. That's number one. Two, there's always something going on. There's always some activity happening in front of some interesting architecture, whether very modern or very old. There's steam sprouting out from the streets. There's workers. There's just like life on the street in New York.
Yeah.
And it's just an incredible experience being able to shoot there. And then when you come to Los Angeles, and in New York, I walked everywhere. I didn't even have a car. Here, when you think about anything, you think about, okay, I'm going to go down into the garage and get in my car and drive and find somewhere to park. It just puts a damper on the whole thing. And then there's no energetic city center. There's great places. I love going to Santa Monica Pier and other parts of the Los Angeles area, but it's not that same kind of energetic city life that I miss.
So you're shooting now with the X100F.
Yes.
I looked. I can't look at it at the moment because I don't want the thing to keep binging at me. But I looked at your Facebook profile. Wow, some of those landscapes are just incredible.
So landscape is a whole new world for me. Well,
it's a whole new world that looks amazing, Reuven.
Thank you, thank you. I started the landscape because I was feeling actually quite depressed over that lack of New York feeling that I had here, and thinking, what am I going to do? Photography has become this passion, and I can't really figure out how to do it and what to do with it. And so I started to take advantage of what's here, which is some amazing landscapes. And so I'm learning a bit about that too.
Yeah, well, it's incredible work. In terms of what do you shoot professionally, or because I don't know whether you're a full-time professional or.
Not at all. I work in technology consulting, and photography is my side passion.
Would you do us a favor on the FujiCast Facebook group? Would you mind sharing some of your street work and some of your New York travels?
Happy to.
I'd love to see that. And I'm sure those listening now would love to see that as well. Right, we're going to do a random question for you.
All right.
That was my randomizer. So favourite Instagrammer. You mentioned YouTubers, so I'm going to give you a choice. That you watch a lot of YouTube. So I'll say you can have a favourite Instagrammer, or you can have a favourite YouTuber.
Favorite YouTuber, Sean Tucker.
Yeah.
Really like that guy. I like his sensibility. I like his images. I like the stories he tells and how to think about those things. A really impressive guy, worth following.
We'll go look for that. And Reuven, it's been great talking to you. Thank you very much for offering yourself up for this experience as well.
Thanks so much. I love listening to the show. I love the interplay between the two of you, and it's an honor for me to be here today. So thanks so much.
So time for a couple more. First up, I think it's going to be Janet. It's Broughton, isn't it? Janet Broughton.
It is, yes. Hi.
Now I've looked at some of your work. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean,
thank you.
Yeah. So for the listeners, tell us exactly what you do, what your kind of photography and your photographic passion is.
I have a passion for all sorts photographically, to be quite honest. But if you look through what I'm sharing online, you'll see a lot of still lifes, a lot of indoor still lifes, a lot of flowers, gardens. I shoot almost always with lens babies or vintage lenses, and I work a lot with textures. I design and sell textures, but they are my passion to sort of work with them as well. But I do sometimes shoot portraits. I did start off in business shooting portraits and the odd wedding, but then I found myself not shooting things that kind of lit me up, just shooting for clients. So I've kind of really transformed and sort of shoot the things that make me happy, basically. Do
you prefer shooting then with just flowers and the inanimate objects, if you like, in the shot instead of people?
I do enjoy shooting people. What I did fall out of love with was only shooting for clients. So I just kind of followed the things that lit me up, if you like. So yeah, I do enjoy shooting people. I'm working on a personal project at the moment where I'm shooting people's hands holding inanimate objects. So they're objects that have no value, no financial value, but they have a really high emotional value to the owners. So I'm kind of shooting people in that way, but I'm not actually sharing any of that work at the moment till it's finished, and I can share it as a complete body of work.
What a great idea. How do you approach people and say, I just want to shoot your hands? What information do you give them? What's the reason behind it? What do you say to them?
I just stick it out on Facebook, to be quite honest. Tell people I'm shooting this project, explain what's behind it, that most people do have something that's not worth anything to anybody else. For me, it's a little brooch that was my grandma's. She died when I was probably about 8, so don't have a lot of memories of her, but I do remember that she always wore brooches on a coat, and she didn't have a lot of money, so the brooch is, it's totally worthless to anybody else, but it's got a lot of value to me. So that it was my object that kind of triggered this idea that most people will have something like that's totally worthless. So, when we go, they'll probably end up thrown away.
I think it's an amazing idea. And you've just reminded me so much of my dear grandmother from Enfield, Rosie, who wore brooches all the time. She was of a generation where you just wore a brooch.
That's it. That was the same with my grandma. It was that generation. So I'm 53. My grandma's been dead a while, so maybe if she was alive, she'd probably be about 100 now. But yeah, it was a generation where they did, they weren't dressed if they didn't have a brooch on the coat.
Yeah. All right, we're going to do a random question for you. So here comes the not so random randomizer. Oh, I like this one. One piece of kit you'd love to own. So, money's no object here. You can just waltz into that shop there and buy what you want. What would it be?
Oh, gosh. I am the least kit-driven person in the world. I'm not interested in cameras or anything. So, gosh, what would it be?
What do you shoot with at the moment, then?
Well, there's a bit of a story. So I've shot with Sonys for years. I have got a Sony Alpha 99, which is a DSLR, but I've been having shoulder problems. So I bought an XT20, which is a bit of a backward step, but I bought it because it's got so little weight. And I absolutely love shooting with it. And it's great with my vintage lenses. So I don't know, maybe I'd like to find a total vintage lens emporium and buy lots more vintage lenses. I honestly don't know. I don't crave gear at all. That's probably the worst question you could have asked me.
Should we randomize the randomizer again? Let's do it again. Here we go. No, it's a second chance. Right. Okay. Most embarrassing mistake you've made.
Photographically.
Yeah, photographic. Oh yeah, I wouldn't be so rude as to ask anything else.
Walking backwards, shooting a client with a horse and not realising there was a small hole behind me just big enough for my foot, and my foot going down it and falling over.
Oh, were you okay? You didn't sprain an ankle or something, did you?
No. And even if I had, I would have put a really brave face on it.
I'm all right. I'm okay. It doesn't
Damage
hurt.
for pride, but nothing else.
Yeah. Janet, thank you very, very much for your time. Nice to talk to you.
And you, Neil.
And so finally this week, it's Cliff. Hello, Cliff.
Hello. Hi, Neil.
Cliff Hughes, isn't it?
That's right.
You're not a photographer, are you? Not full-time?
No, not at all. I have done the odd bit of semi-pro work, but I was the son of a photographer. My father was a professional corporate and industrial photographer in the 60s and 70s and early 80s.
Industrial photographer? So yeah. What's that?
Well, in those days, he actually worked for a photographic department because in that time, most big industrial companies ran their own photographic departments. So they would have perhaps 5 or 6 guys, and it was always guys, sitting in an office with all the gear and the darkroom and everything, and they'd be producing process photography for all of the industrial processes that needed to be catalogued and documented, and also the PR stuff, for products that they were making that they wanted to put out in press releases.
Wow, so that kept him busy, I would have thought.
Yeah, and then at the end of the 60s and early 70s, they started to close all of those departments down, and he became freelance like just about everyone else. And then had to make his own living after that. And I was in my mid-teens by the mid-70s, so I kind of came in and helped him out, and he trained me as a darkroom monkey.
Do you think that's missing from... I know this is the old argument, and I can almost see people raising their eyes now going, oh, go on, Grandad. Do you think that's missing from those entering the profession, knowing the alchemy of photography, or is that just a bit of old romantic claptrap?
Well, I sort of got two views about it, really. I think there is... I see the argument that it is a bit of romantic claptrap. We've moved on. Technology has given us these remarkable tools which allow us to do things you couldn't have done a few years ago. I mean, my father did very few weddings, but when he did do weddings, he would take 55 rolls of 120. So that's 60 pictures.
Wow, right.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And you started at the beginning of the day with a picture of the bride in the mirror, with her veil on, and then you'd finish. The last shot you took was the cutting of the cake, which you actually staged before they cut it, but you did it at the very beginning of the reception. And then he or I would drive off to the lab, straight into the tank. It'd get processed. We'd be back at the reception by 4:30 with a proof book, and we'd be selling selling orders straight off a table.
Because not everybody was a photographer, that must have been a fairly lucrative way of working.
It was pretty lucrative, yeah. I mean, it was a very good business. I mean, if we'd have done it full time, we would have done probably slightly better than just the industrial stuff, I think. But I mean, he didn't want to do weddings. He didn't like the pressure of it because, or rather the, it was just, he didn't really like working on Saturdays. I think that was the truth of it.
No. Well, you need to be okay about that if you can be a wedding photographer, particularly in that era. There weren't really many Wednesday and Thursday weddings.
No, and the irony of he was just really good at it because he got on with people so well. And in those days, it was very much organising all the group shots and everything like that. Yeah. And of course, now, I mean, I posted about this on the Facebook page. I went to an air show a couple of weeks ago just to test a lens out. And I came back with 3,000 shots. Well, you couldn't do that in the film days.
I can almost see. Is dear dad still with us? Or
no, sadly not. No, he died about 20 years ago.
I tell you what, I can almost see him from the grave, looking over his glasses at you now, thinking 3,000 shots, son. What's going on? How much money is that?
It's a great shame that. That he didn't get to see. He just was on the real cusp of the digital revolution, which he would have loved because he was really into all of the technology and everything. Yeah.
He'd love it now. Now I have to do a randomizer question for you. So you ready for this? Here we go. Now you don't photograph people for a living now, but you work in television, darling. So, but this is still appropriate. Somebody you'd like to make a portrait of?
I think if I had to choose anyone, dead or alive, I'd probably choose someone from the war years, the Second World War years, probably Winston Churchill, someone who I was genuinely interested in myself, just to meet.
But would you dare take that cigar out of his mouth like Karsh
no,
did?
Definitely not. No, but someone like that, probably, or one of the RAF leaders, Bomber Harris or Trenchard or someone like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and there have been loads of pictures of them anyway. So it's
but this is your spin on it, and it's somebody you'd like to photograph, and
I think someone like that would be really interesting.
Thank you, Cliff. It's been lovely talking to you, and thank you also for listening to the FujiCast.
It's a pleasure, Neil. Thank you very much.
We'll continue with more friends of the podcast, listener stories, while Kev's in Spain and I'm back in the UK over the next few weeks. Thank you to those who took and will take part over the next couple of episodes. Part 2 then. We're not doing the simpler straps while Kev's away. We're giving JP a chance to hold on to some of the straps that he has, and we'll come back to doing that in when Kev's back in Blighty. You probably don't want to come back though, do you? With all this sunshine.
Yeah, if I ever come back.
Yeah. By the way, if the kids walk in, because we heard that, don't worry, just invite them in. Maybe Albie could do his he could do his payoff. That might be a sneaky way to get him to do it. Is he having fun? Because he's always in the pool in the pictures you show when you're.
You know what? I adore the fact that him and Rosa get on. I mean, of course, they have sibling rivalries, but they love each other so much. They play really well together. And I was on to Gemma about this the other day. For a long time, when they were kids, even though we had enough rooms in our house, they wanted to sleep in the same room. And even now, occasionally, especially on weekends and stuff like that, Rosa will say to Albie, "Do you want to come and sleep in my room?" And then they have a really good bonding.
Sleepover.
Yeah, sleepover. And I think that's a good grounding for life. I think if you can get on well with your siblings.
You have to send us how you do that, because Jack and Thomas, not quite the same rivalry. I'd say every day.
Isn't it? Two boys.
Right, questions. Can I kick off with one?
Go.
Ryan Cook, please could you tell us about how you set up for focus? And that was it. Just a few words. That was it. Ryan, a man of few words. How do you set your focus up then? You've told us back button before and all this. So run through it, because Ryan may not have heard that.
Well, back button focusing, which is, use the AFL button on the back, that kind of snap focuses, and then you can manually focus override. The other key setting, I think, that people probably might be interested in is the release priority setting in the menu. So I have my AFS set to focus and my AFC set to release. And the reason for that is because when you're doing continuous focus, you don't want the camera insisting on sharp focus or insisting on focus acquisition for every single frame in a continuous burst, especially if it's like the X-T3, which has 15 frames per second. So release acquisition works better for continuous focus. So it will still get the focus from a majority of the images, but maybe one or two at the end or the beginning won't be perfectly sharp, but it will. You have a much greater chance of getting the rest in focus.
Well, I'm gonna use that tip now for continual focus stuff, because I'm not doing that, and I'm having mediocre results sometimes. And that's probably why, isn't it? That's probably why. Go on then, your question, Kev.
Okay, so this is from Josh Rivero. Good evening from Colorado, USA. Buenos dias, Josh. This message is the two-parter. The first is some praise for Kevin and Neil. The second is my question. Your podcast has been very inspiring to my photographic journey, and as a recent Fuji concert, he says concert, but presumably means convert. Currently shooting X-T20, 1855 2.8. I find the content fascinating, etc., etc. It's all transferable for different camera flavors, etc. Blah, 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 blah. Good work. Well done. My question is for Kevin. I have chosen to adopt a documentary style for my photography after consuming your YouTube content and looking at your website. In keeping with your philosophy on using P mode, which I have used for a long time, do you find that prime lenses are an added tool for that, in that you do not have to mess with the focal length? I have been intrigued by prime lenses for this reason. Look forward to hearing back from you. Much love. Keep up the excellent podcast. I look forward to it every week. So I only use prime lenses really for my stills work, and I believe that is beneficial. Although saying that, I know lots of people who use zooms and are perfectly happy with them, and it does depend. It's a little bit of horses for courses, but I do think that if you are using, for example, I shoot 23-56 almost all the time, and that adds a cohesion to the look of my images. So the clients will see on the website pretty much what they can expect to get in terms of focal length. They may not understand it, but they will see that. And absolutely, it makes it so much easier for me. It also forces you to not be so lazy. Well, put it this way, it forces me to not be so lazy. If I'm using a zoom, I tend to, just kind of stand back, zoom in and out, and I don't think that's good for me, although that's personally me, not necessarily everybody else. Prime lenses, typically prime lenses are going to give you better image quality, typically, although the Fujifilm zooms are amazing. And I'm guessing the zooms from Canon and Nikon, etc. these days are also amazing. But for me, prime lenses, it's just one of those extra things that I don't have to think about. And, I've said it many times, the old advert, let the train take the strain. And if I can let the camera do as much of it as possible, then I will do. And that includes, the lenses, for sure.
When you mentioned the Canon zooms, the best Canon zoom I ever owned was that 24-70 Mark II. Oh, phenomenal piece of glass. Heavy.
See, when I was shooting Canon, I only had the Mark I of that. The Mark II was never around. And it was good, but it was soft in, kind of wide end and stuff like that. So
the new one definitely, and then the 1635 was the other one, which was good for. But I mean, these days with the Fujifilm lenses, as far as zoom goes, I do have the 18-55, but the 10-24 for me is a staple diet for certainly for when I'm filming and doing kind of run and gun guerrilla style recording stuff.
Filming, I can't remember a time when I've used primes for filming.
No. Greetings from Metro NYC. This is from Mark Zilberman.
I met him in New York once.
Oh, Mark Zilberman?
Yeah,
right.
Really nice.
Okay. I'm aware that Kevin went from 0 weddings to about 65 in his first year in business, and I think Neil's experience wasn't that much different. You're right there. Nonetheless, a very important question is how does one grow one's documentary wedding photography portfolio from nothing? I've already heard about being a second shooter as much as possible. I sense a little frustration there. But that's a competitive niche. Moreover, there's not much guarantee that one will be given the opportunity to shoot in that genre. And of course, sometimes people say you can't use. I know when I've had second shooters, sometimes they've not been able to use the images. I don't want them to confuse. I don't want them appearing somewhere else alongside mine in a different place, and people think, oh, who shot this wedding? So that can be an issue. I believe most documentary wedding shooters are one-man shows as well, and it seems that most wedding photographers want their seconds to shoot with a particular body, be that Nikon or Canon. Like you two, I don't. I've thought of advertising on Craigslist at a competitive price, but I'm looking for other ideas. What say yous? That's Brooklyn for you two. I think this this question... I think this question deserves and it does. It probably does deserve a strap. But we're not doing straps this week, so maybe another week, Mark. Maybe another week. But very good question though.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not quite sure, because instantly I'd have been saying go second shooting, but of course that's not the answer Mark wants here.
It's hard. It is hard these days. It's harder now. We did both go from 0 to 60, 70, whatever it was in a year. But in those days, there was a lot less photographers out there, a lot less. Yeah. And, I think now what I would say to Mark, and I think I've spoke to him about this, is, find friends of friends who've got kids that are getting married, or people that are getting married, and just do it for free, initially, as long as it's people you have some kind of connection with. It's a friend of a friend, or there's a trackable connection. Don't just do it for free for a total stranger.
What about the Facebook route?
Yeah, Facebook, but again, do it, share it with your friend in your friends of friends timeline. So, there is a connection, and just say, look, you know what? I'm a very good photographer, as Mark is. I know he is. I'm looking to build this business, and there's going to be people out there that aren't interested necessarily in spending money on photography, and I'm going to do it for you for free or for expenses, whatever. And that way you avoid the second shooter thing. You shoot by yourself. You'll yield good results, and by keeping it friends of friends, you there is not a complete lack of connection, in which case it could go a little bit peat, as we say in the UK. So that's really what I suggest to people these days. Second shooting, I have a couple of second shooters I use occasionally now as well, and if I'm paying them to do a job as second shooter, then they're not to use the images themselves. But if they are, if I'm mentoring them or something like that, then they will come along, and I will say that you can use the images, but they absolutely need to be unnamed, so the clients can't be named, the venue can't be named, and on the blog post it has to be a link back saying, I was part of the shooting. I don't want them to say I was a second shooter or I was being mentored by, but I was part of the photography team with Kevin Mullins. That's it, pretty much.
In the early days, I remember, and this might still work, I don't know, I put, because nobody else did this, I put a load of postcards in churches. And on those postcards, it was a beautiful picture of the church. In fact, I ended up doing it in you might not have the ability to do this straight away because you'd have had to have been doing this every single season. But the churches that were ongoing that I did this in, I'd got a picture from every season. I'd gone round and got the snowy ones as well. So a snowy one, an autumn one, a summer one, a spring one, And I put these in little plastic holders, and the idea was that they gave a nominal amount to the church, so the church were happy to put these postcards there. And on the back it was advertising my wedding photography services. Now you might think, oh, that's a bit of a long shot, Neil, but don't forget, if you get married in church, particularly in the UK, I don't know what it's like outside the UK, Mark, it might be different, I don't know for you, but there is a rule that they have to attend church so many times before they get married, and so therefore, a lot of these couples are going half a dozen more times, sometimes many, many more times, and sooner or later they might pick up a postcard, and on the back it will say wedding photography. And I did get success off that system, definitely. So, you're not looking for, Mark, you're not looking for, I assume out of this, you're not, these early days, you're not looking for 10, 20, 30, 40 free or cheaper weddings. Well, of course you're not, because you're a businessman. But, if you can get 3, 4, 5, 6 of these, that might be a system to think about adopting. I don't know. And wedding photographers don't always think, I don't think, outside the box, to use a horrible sort of cliche, but they don't when they think about advertising and how to get to clients. There are many ways to skin a cat, as it were. Anyway.
I've got Molly here. She sat here purring away next to me.
Oh, Molly. Molly the Spanish cat.
Yeah.
Does she purr in Spanish or English?
Yeah, she goes la prr, la prr, la prr.
Go on, have you been at the Cervezas already? Put them on your cornflakes. Your question.
It is a bit late already, mind. I must admit, it's nearly 11 o'clock. So
yeah, it's got to be beer o'clock. Go on, your question.
Okay, so this is from Dragos. Dragos, again, Dragos. Well done.
Dragos.
Dear Neil and Kevin, congratulations for the FujiCast. Blah, 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 blah. One quick question. Did you ever think about writing a book on documentary wedding photography? There are some resources on the internet, including one on Kevin's websites, but I found no comprehensive material on the matter. Could it be a matter of time or interest on your part? Thank you. I think we've both had the ideas, haven't we?
Well, we sort of mooted a concept. You probably don't remember, but yeah, I have actually started. I'm a couple of chapters into one actually, but those couple of chapters were started probably 12 months, maybe more ago. Yeah, it must be more. What about you? What about you? I mean, you've written your X100 book and things like that, and then
It's, I think I've put so much stuff on f16.click over the years. I think I probably have enough content, but. There is a book called Documentary Wedding Photography by a friend of mine called Kerry, I want to say Hargreaves, but it's not Kerry Hargreaves. It's Kerry Morgan, of course it's Kerry Morgan, who she wrote this a long time ago, and it's a really good book, although I don't think she would consider herself now a kind of purist documentary wedding photographer. She's moved to France now, and she does beautiful, beautiful work. But what strikes me mostly about her work is her amazing group shots, like from Vanity Fair. Really nice woman, amazing photographer. And she did write a book about, and I think it's just called Documentary Wedding Photography. And that was by PS Publishing, I think, but years ago. So whether you can get hold of that any longer, I really don't know. There was also a book, Joe Bursink wrote a book.
Well, do you know, it's funny you should say that. It's here. It's called I Do. Jessica Simpson, I Do, Achieving Your Dream Wedding. Was that the one you meant or not?
No. It was called, I think it was called Documentary Wedding Photography again or something like that. But he's obviously written a couple. Yeah, I mean, there are stuff out there if you dig deep enough, but I really want to do one. Not so much about the kind of instructional element of it, but I really, in fact, mine. I don't want to kind of talk too much about it because I'm on the way. I'm on the way. Put it that way. So there will be some.
We've got a competition then between us to see who can bring the first one out, or should we do it together?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We could launch it. We could do like Guns N' Roses did that with Use Your Illusion. We could launch both of them on the same day.
Yours would win. I'd have to go and hide under a rock somewhere.
I don't think so.
Right. Mitch Stringer. Neil, I shoot with the XT3 for my street photography and wish to add it to my sports photography kit. However, unlike this probably should be you because you shot with the 1DX. However, unlike my Canon 1DX2, I see no way to tag photos for fast downloading and transmission during intermissions in American football and baseball. Does the XT3 not offer that function? Keep up the great podcast. I don't think it does it?
It's really annoying because this is something I've mentioned to Fujifilm a million times, and I know I'm not the only one. You can tag images. You can use the favorites. You can use the asterisk rating in the image review on the back of when you kind of press playback. But they are not. They're not kind of read by Photomechanic or Lightroom or anything useful. So Fingers crossed. If we all cross enough fingers, right? Everybody listening, cross your fingers right now. And if you've got toes, cross your toes as well. And maybe something will happen because that's an imperative thing, I think, especially, they've got Tokyo coming up, the Olympics next year, the Rugby World Cup, and more people are using XT3 for sport. They've got the big 200mm zooms, they've got extenders, they've got the capabilities. But he's right. They need to do that workflow element. It can't possibly be that difficult.
With Tokyo coming up, that usually means, and certainly people like Nikon will have a brand new flagship body out, won't they, for the Olympics? Yeah. No doubt about that whatsoever. Right, that's it for this week. I know slightly shorter episode, but you got Kevin's on holiday, And so we've been keeping them a little bit shorter for the next 3 weeks. But thank you, Kev. What's planned for your day now?
It's a really busy day. I'm going to get up from here. I'm going to move over there. I'm going to put a drink in my hand. and then maybe I'll move over to the pool a little bit later and with a drink in my hand. And
are you going to go out or do anything today, or is it just beer and pool?
No. So tonight, maybe if I'm still awake, I'll look at the stars. We get lovely kind of Milky Way stuff going on here, although the moon is just starting to show again. Full moon is the 15th, so it's starting to show again, which kind of ruins the Milky Way.
Oh, we expect some amazing star photography in between then, should we?
I wouldn't be...
No? Oh, no, but having said that, you've only taken the X100, haven't you?
I have got the X100, but I did bring my X-T3 for filming, and I have got that Brighton Star 7.5 mil. Anyway, so I might go with that. I might watch the goats. The goat man walks the goats past the house usually about 7-8 o'clock at night.
What a busy day you have. Right, now I've got a challenge for you, and you have to apply yourself to this challenge, okay? We need you to go record some payoffs. This week you can have Rosa for the final time.
My dad's Instagram is Kevin Mullins Photography. See his films on YouTube at Documentary Eye. His website is kevinmullinsphotography.co.uk. Or for street workshops, training and everything Fujifilm, go to f16.click.
And for me this week's going to be Jack.
My dad's Instagram is Neil James. See his films on YouTube at Neil James Photo. His website is neiljames.com for pictures and one-to-one mentoring. And you can hear his other photography podcast, which is called Breathe Pictures, wherever you get your podcasts.
So when I say Rosa's the final time you can use it, it's not at all. Of course, she can be she can do a Spanish voiceover. But we need you to go find a payoff. Now it can be anybody you like. It can be the folks that are there. You've got your father-in-law there, of course, haven't you? Have you got the Spanish gardener or something like that? That would be good.
No, she definitely won't. She definitely wouldn't do it. But yeah, no, I have plans. I'll be mostly next week. I might get some proper Spanish stuff going.
Right. Okay.
Go and find the goat.
Your challenge is on. Thank you, Kev. Have a nice rest of the day drinking beer.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.